You're listening to Al Pastor, the show that helps you love God, love your neighbor, and eat more tacos. I'm your host, Pastor Brian. Welcome to the show. Well, hello again to everybody out there that's listening. Today we're going to go over Genesis chapter number 7. And today's Bible study day, one of my favorite days of the week. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. I would love to know if anyone took me up on my advice and looked into some of the things from Genesis chapter 6, especially verses 1 through 4, pertaining to the sons of God and the daughters of men. So I hope you at least checked out some of those resources and at a minimum watched the short documentary called The Unseen Realm, where I posted links not only in the podcast description, but also on Faith Life. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk about a couple of things out of chapter 7. And one of the things that I personally do believe is very, very important, and I was really glad to read a specific excerpt out of the Genesis record that I continuously recommend by a man. His last name is Morris. But right out of the get-go, chapter 7, verse 1, I never saw this before, and I thought it was interesting, just snippet of observation from Morris. And let's read chapter 7, verse 1. The Bible says, "Then the Lord said to Noah, 'Come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation.'" And so just a quick little snippet here. He says it is significant too that the Lord said, "Come into the ark," not "go." So think about that. Look at the invitation of God. He says to Noah, "Come into the ark." He doesn't say go. So he goes on. He says God would be in the ark with them. And although the flood would soon be unleashed in devastating fury, they were all safe with him. Isn't that a beautiful picture? I really, really appreciated that and love that. And in essence, this is what God offers us as well, doesn't he? He invites us. He says, "Come in." And that's where he is. I think of just an ark of safety, or like sheltering under the wings of the Most High, like Psalm 91. So just a beautiful, beautiful picture. So what we're reading about is we're getting some more details in chapter 7 as far as the flood. There are a couple of things. I'll just highlight just a couple of things. We have obviously the length of the time that it rained. We have the windows of heaven that were open, and the springs of the deep that burst forth. Those things I wouldn't gloss over. Those are highly, highly significant. In other words, the water that was separated that we saw in Genesis chapter 1, the waters below and the waters above. In other words, the firmament that was above. So now the earth is going to be much, much different. This vapor canopy, it uses the language here, the windows of heaven were opened. And by the way, that is a very, very significant phrase. It would be like saying the floodgates were opened. And so imagine the amount of rain we've seen here just personally in the last couple of days in Northern California and Southern California. What can happen when, oh boy, I feel for these folks that are going through it. And I also thank the Lord. It's kind of a strange feeling because you thank the Lord that it's not happening to you. And then it's like, man, why is that happening up there to them and down there as well? I say down there, like, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, all those areas, Ventura, and yeah, especially up north. But I think it's significant to me as we are having this, and, we're even on a flood watch, but just, getting 5-6 inches of rain, the amount of damage and the amount of water that produces. I saw just a small snippet, a news clip of the reservoir levels up in Northern California. Like they're beginning to be replenished up to capacity just within these last couple of days. So what's significant to me is that this is, it's an unusual storm. Yes, we'll give it that, whatever you want to call it. I know they're calling it a bomb cyclone and what do they call it? An atmospheric river, right? Some of the language that they use. One was an atmospheric river, the other was a bomb cyclone. But here in Genesis 7, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That's a big deal. So when these windows of heaven opened up, this vapor canopy was completely depleted that had been surrounding the earth. So this particular phrase, this is what I want to get to. This phrase, the windows of heaven, is significant is because the only other time that it's used in Malachi chapter 3. Now you're probably saying, well, what's in Malachi chapter 3? Well, in Malachi chapter 3, it's the promise that God gives when we are faithful to honor him with our first fruits. And in other words, our tithe and with our offering. God makes a promise that he would open the windows of heaven. So this isn't some small, insignificant term. God says, when you're faithful in honoring me with your first fruits, with your tithe and with your offering, it carries the idea that this floodgates are open, that he can pour out blessings. Really, really incredible. The other thing is the day. Let me see what verse that was. I think it's verse 11. So some may wonder, well, what's the significance of the day? I will tell you this. I have this notated. There is significance to the day. Now, I already can tell you what the significance of the day that Noah landed and when they hit dry ground and when they came out of the ark. But this one, I'm not sure, but let's read it in verse 11. It says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, and on that day, the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were open. So in the 600 years of Noah's life, but the key here is the 17th day of the 2nd month. What is that? I don't have an answer for you, but hopefully we'll get to it when we see the ark lands. The other thing that we're going to see is Noah enters into the ark, so they continue with obedience. And let's see, where else is this? I'm just skimming back through. My notes are a little dirty on chapter 7. I need to kind of come in and clean this up. Let's see. 7 more days. Okay, verse 4. So they enter into the ark. Noah receives the invitation, come into the ark. They're in the ark for 7 days. That's interesting, isn't it? So what it is believed, and I actually have it on commentary, is that Noah's grandfather, Methuselah, actually had passed away. If you go through and you run the references, Methuselah passed away in the 600th year of Noah. So it's believed that Methuselah died. His name means literally, when he dies, it will come. That's how he was named. Enoch prophetically named Methuselah. And then it's believed that Methuselah died and God fulfilled the promise that he made prophetically through Enoch. And then for 7 days, they had a period of mourning. So they were in the ark. And then, of course, we know that it was God himself that closed that door of the ark. Really, really incredible. So we've touched on that. And let's see here, just kind of going through. Verse number 20 is very, very important. It says that the waters prevailed 15 cubits upward, and the mountains were covered. So in other words, if you take the highest mountain, the water was 15 cubits above it. Now you're probably wondering, how big is a cubit? Well, a cubit is what we believe, okay? Take this with a grain of salt. We think we know. It would be 18 inches would be 1 cubit. So in other words, a cubit would be 1.5 feet. So if I took, I'm just going to do the math here. So 15 times, I'm going to go 15 times 18 and then divide that by 12. So that'd be about 22 feet above the highest mountain. Now that's significant. And the reason I'm saying that's significant is because to have water rise 22 feet above the highest mountain completely across the globe, global flood, and this is what I'm trying to drive home, it was a global flood. It was not regional. And you may wonder, why are you even saying that? I'll tell you in a second. 22 feet. So pay attention if there are some of you that watch the news or different news clips. Notice if you happen to catch anything about these reservoirs that are filling up, look how much they're filling up. I mean, that's a really big amount. I had a phone call there. So normally I put my phone in whatever you call it mode, but I just didn't do it this time. So part of my plan was to talk about the importance of global flood. And I can tell that this podcast has already gone probably, well, it's not long at this point, but it could end up if I do that. Not that I don't, but I think for the most part, most of us are just like, well, yeah, duh, it's a global flood. But I do want to make you aware, in case you encounter any kind of material that's out there, is sometimes there are some proponents of what's known as a regional flood. And that is highly, highly problematic. Not only from a biblical perspective, but just textual and from an interpretive standpoint. So if you are interested and if you have the resource, towards the end of chapter 7, Morris really lays this out, and he lays out the dangers of looking at a regional flood. So something to think about, something to look at, and if you guys have any thoughts or questions on chapter 7 whatsoever, or maybe there's something that's just like, hey, what's in there? Hey, post it on Face Live. Let me know somehow, some way. Hope you guys are doing good. I really hope to see the majority of you at Bible study, and I think we're going to have a great time. So until then, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to Al Pastor with Brian Overturf. If you found value in this, please subscribe and get updates. Most places podcasts are available. We're right here on Anchor FM through Spotify, also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. I hope you'll tune in for the next episode. Until then, we'll see you later.